Hey guys, LC Holt here. And this is my weekly update for May the 20th. Today we're going to be talking about the mysterious case of D.B. Cooper. Before we get into that, however, let me introduce everybody that's going to be on the show today. There's quite a few people going to be on the show today. Rebecca Ivey is sitting to my immediate right. She's been on this program before. We did a show about the Zodiac and then another thing. She's joining me today with the usual collaborators on all my shows. Ryan Rayonec, how you doing, man?
What's happening?
And Zach Myers. Zach, how's the weather in Arizona?
Freaking hot, man. That's why I'm a hermit. I just stay inside all the time. I don't ever go anywhere. That's why I'm so
It sucks
pale.
there.
Well,
Yeah,
let me.
see, Ryan agrees.
It's hot, man. It's really fucking hot.
It's actually kind of hot here too. But anyway,
But at least we have grass there that's not fake.
that's true. That's true. But you know who did not have, when it was not hot? It was not hot the day before Thanksgiving of 1971. I think I'm starting to perfect these segues, Rebecca.
Yes.
Yeah. So November the 24th of 1971 is when this D.B. Cooper story happens. In case we want to hear more about Zach's grass, we could always stop. Would you like me to stop, Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay. Zach, what's your yard looking like?
Cactus.
All right, anyway, back to D.B. Cooper. So the day before Thanksgiving, 1971, this middle-aged fella, about 40 years old, they say, he walks into the Portland International Airport. He throws down $20 on the counter of the flight attendant or the ticket lady, whatever the hell she is. And he says, I want a plane ticket one way to Seattle, to the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, which is a 30-minute plane ride. Okay, back then you could actually buy a plane ticket for $20. There were a lot of differences back then in terms of airport security. That is to say, there was no airport security back then. You could walk into an airport, slap down $20, say I want a plane ticket, and walk directly onto the plane. They didn't search you. You didn't have to show your identification. Doesn't really matter because driver's license back then did not include a picture. So it was just like a little paper card. And this guy didn't even have to show that. He said, my name is Dan Cooper. And so the ticket was made out to a man named Dan Cooper. Now, we'll get into this later. The title of this video is The Mysterious Case of D.B. Cooper. The man never said that his name was D.B. Cooper. That was a discrepancy in media reports that got picked up, and he became known as D.B. Cooper. But the name he gave the lady at the desk was Dan Cooper. So he got his ticket, and this fellow wearing a black suit, a black clip-on tie with a little mother-of-pearl tie pin, and a really light, like rain jacket, black, walks across the tarmac with a briefcase in his hand, and he gets on the plane with about 36 other people. It's only about a third of the way full, because this was like what you would think of as like a shuttle plane. You know, it wasn't like a long trip, 30 minutes up to Seattle. So he sits in the back of the plane. And at a certain point, about 2:50, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, on schedule, the plane takes off and heads towards Seattle. Well, not long after this plane took off, Mr. Cooper signals over to the flight attendant, and he says, could you come here a second? And he gives her, well, I mean, Beck's sitting here. Here, we're going to do a reenactment for you. Okay, so this is the flight attendant, right? I'm D.B. Cooper, because, you know, I'm the lead actor in this thing. Yeah. And so I say, hey, miss, here you go. Oh, wait, lady, get back here. You better read that note. I happen to have a bomb. So she reads the note, right? And it says, I have a bomb. And in my briefcase. And this lady sits down and next to Mr. Cooper, and she says, well, let me see this bomb. And so you don't have to really say that.
That's a woman's way of saying allegedly.
There you go. And so he opened up the suitcase, and inside this little, oh, it's a briefcase. Inside it, there are 4 cylinders taped to 4 cylinders, and there's some electrical wiring that's running to a battery. And then he closes the case, and he says, "Here, lady, here, take this piece of paper, and I'm going to tell you something. You're going to write something down here." We got some visual aids. We got like a dramatization going on here. Okay, I want you to take this to the pilot. So write this down. I want $200,000. You're really writing it down.
Yes, I am.
I want 200.
I'm going method here.
I want $200,000 by 5 p.m. in cash, and I want it in $20 bills. And you put it in a knapsack for me. All right. Make sure you write that down.
Yes.
And then I want 4 parachutes. I want 2 back parachutes and 2 front parachutes. Okay. And I want a fuel truck waiting for me in Seattle so I can refuel the plane. All right. And I want all of this by 5 p.m. And no funny stuff, or else I'll do the job. That's actually what he said.
That's very.
Yeah. Make sure you get the no funny stuff.
No.
You should really play D.B. Cooper in a movie because you're doing an excellent job, man.
Oh, I tell you what, man, this is like an Academy Award performance here. And she's getting all method because she's actually writing this shit down. But anyway, so that's what and so she goes and she takes it to the pilot. You don't have to do that.
Oh, I was just drawing a picture of a funny man. Okay.
Oh, yeah, because that's what you're going to do when you get funny. Okay, so the FBI is notified from the pilot via the radio. Okay, and the plane circles Puget Sound for 2 hours. Now, you can imagine these other passengers are sitting there thinking that they were in for a 30-minute flight, and they wind up circling for 2 hours. The pilot tells them we're having some minor technical difficulties, and that's why. Now, why technical difficulties on a plane would make you circle for 2 hours, it's not like they had much choice. They had to just buy into this excuse. The whole time that's happening on the ground, the FBI and the local Seattle Police Department are trying to get together all of these resources. This money, they go to a skydiving school and they get the 4 parachutes. 2 are reserve. The reserve are the ones that you wear on the front. And then 2 are primary, which are the ones that you wear on the back. Now, something that's interesting to note here is that the 2 primary parachutes were what he wanted. I forgot to tell you to write this down on the thing, but he didn't want military parachutes. He wanted standard skydiving parachutes. And he was specific about that. So add that to the note and take that to the pilot, will you? And so the 2 reserve, though, they say they did this accidentally, but when the FBI got the 2 reserve, one of the reserve was actually a display that used in classrooms that was sewn shut. It was a dummy chute. So if you pulled the ripcord, nothing would happen. So that's what they delivered to him. They delivered 2 primary chutes, one a little better than the other, and 2 reserve chutes, and one of the reserve chutes, they say, accidentally wound up being a dummy that was sewn together, that was completely non-functional. So what happens is, as they're circling, D.B. Cooper looks down. I'll call him DB because that's what everybody knows him by. Dan Cooper looks down and he starts to notice and comment on certain geographical things. So he seems familiar with the area. After they pass over McChord Air Force Base, he looks down and he's like, "That's McChord, isn't it?" And the flight attendant, she's like, "I guess." And then he's spotting out other things just by looking out the window. So this guy was obviously familiar with the Washington, Tacoma, Seattle type area, the area around Puget Sound. Now, they managed to get together $10,000 in unmarked bills, $20 bills. And they, and I already told you about the parachutes they got together. Now, the plane landed. Zach, would you like to pick up the story on the plane landing?
I sure would. So yeah, at 5:24, his Cooper was informed that all of his demands were met, and the aircraft landed at 5:39 p.m. at Seattle Tacoma Airport.
Right.
And sorry, excuse me. It was more than an hour after sunset, and Cooper instructed that all the window shades in the cabin would go down to to block snipers from shooting at him or through the windows or anything. I mean, he thought about every little thing he could think of in this. And then the Al Lee, the operations manager, was supposed to come and I think he was bringing him the money, but he was instructed by other authorities to not wear his uniform because they were afraid that Cooper would mistake it for a police uniform and he may do something unpredictable, which they're not giving him a lot of credit because obviously those two do not look any similar. Like they don't look similar at all. So that's just a little weird.
And this whole time they're sitting there on the tarmac on the runway.
Yeah. And then he delivered the cash filled knapsack, and he demanded that the landing gear remain lowered, the wing flaps lowered, the cabin remain unpressurized, and they were having a vapor lock issue while fueling.
Yeah, and the vapor lock, that was one of the things. He started to get really nervous when they were sitting there because it was taking so long for them to deliver the money. And he thought they were about to rush the plane. But the truth is they actually did have a problem refueling the plane because the vapor lock on the engine, on the wing, it was not functioning properly. So there was nothing they could really do about that. They weren't stalling anymore. They really just couldn't refuel the plane for a minute because they had to figure out this issue. But Cooper is getting more. Now, this is something that the flight attendants, a lady named Mucklow and then another lady named, I believe is pronounced Schaffner, they were both commenting that he was a very nice, calm, polite guy. And he seemed really chill about all of this. He was very confident. But when they were sitting there, the longer they were sitting there and the refueling was taking an excessive amount of time, he started to get really, really antsy, and he was ready to get back in the air. And what they told him, what he said his plan was get all the passengers off in Seattle. You can have everybody, but you're going to leave me, the pilot, the co-pilot, an engineer for the cockpit, and one flight attendant. And Mucklow was the one that he chose to stay. So basically, he wanted 5 people on the plane, including himself. When they took off again at 7:40 p.m., which was about, it was a little over an hour since they landed. So this had taken longer than he was expecting. He told them, I'm going to Mexico City. They said, with this plane, which is a Boeing 727, you can't make it from Seattle to Mexico City on even full fuel tanks. So we're going to have to stop one more time. So he said he would stop in Reno, Nevada, and they would refuel one more time. And then he was going to take off, and then that time they were going to go to Mexico City. But the deal was he really didn't care about Mexico City, nor did he really care about Reno, Nevada, because that was never the plan. What happened when they took off again at 7:40, heading toward Reno, Nevada, was, and by the way, the Air Force scrambled a couple of jets. They scrambled F-106 fighter jets, and they followed the plane, one on top and one on bottom. So if Cooper looked out the windows, he couldn't tell that they were being followed by anybody. So these jets were sort of above and below, and they were following the plane just in case something was to happen. Remember, he still got the briefcase that he says has a bomb in it. So shortly after the takeoff, Cooper told the flight attendant, you're going to go and join the rest of the crew in the cockpit. And she said, she was compliant, of course, because why would you argue? And the last thing she saw of Dan Cooper was he was taking something and he was wrapping the knapsack with the money around himself, around his body. Now, later what they discovered is that one of the 2 primary chutes he had opened, and he took the cords, the suspension cords off the parachute. He cut them with a knife, and he used those to wrap and tie the knapsack around his waist. That left his arms and his hands open, and he was just basically going to wear the money all the way down. Now, it's interesting to note that of the two parachutes he chose of the primary, he chose the inferior parachute. There was one that was a sports model parachute that was a lot more reliable. That's the one he cut the suspension cords off of. The one that he put on his back was a slightly older model. And it's kind of bad luck for him, but the one he chose as a reserve was the dummy chute that was sewn shut. So he didn't have a reserve parachute. He must have thought he did, but he had one parachute, and it was not the best of the two. And so this lady, Mucklow, she goes into the cockpit there, and she closes the door, and you know, as she told her to do. And they're riding in the plane, okay? And about 8 p.m., a warning light goes off in the cockpit. And the warning light is telling the pilots that the aft stair door, or aft air stairs, which are in the lower portion of the plane, have been lowered. And they said that at about 13 minutes later, at 8:13, they felt a sudden jerk upward in the back of the plane. It was so pronounced that they actually had to course correct a little bit. So the plane makes it to Reno, and it lands with the aft air stairs down, which you can do. I mean, that didn't impede the landing of the plane. The cops come in, and the FBI, and they search the plane in Reno, and they find that he's gone. So apparently at 8:13, when they felt that bump, was the moment that he jumped out of the back of the plane with the money strapped to his waist, wearing two parachutes, but only one that actually functioned. Now, that would put them, because they did the whole trajectory of this thing, that would put him somewhere over the Lewis River. At 8:13, they were flying through a heavy rainstorm. So basically what happened, to give you some idea, is when he lowered those stairs, it was a pitch black night. It was raining. There was a wind of 172 miles per hour in his face. There was a 15-degree wind chill, so it was freezing. It was well below freezing. He had only a black suit on. I already told you about the parachute situation. And he had no helmet, because that's something he didn't ask for. A lot of skydivers at the time wore helmet as standard gear. He didn't want a helmet. And he jumped out. Now, where he landed depends on when he pulled the ripcord, because if you fall longer, you pull the ripcord, you're going to land at a different place. If you jump straight out and you pull the ripcord, you're going to land at a different place. So that all depends on, there are a lot of variables in terms of where he landed. They were over a mountainous terrain, not far from Mount St. Helens. So they know he was in some sort of a forested area. But to say that you could determine with any degree of accuracy where this guy landed is pretty, it's a bit of a stretch. Now, when the cops and the FBI went into the plane, they found his clip-on tie in his mother-of-pearl tie pin. He took that off before he jumped. And they found, you know, that the parachute, one of the parachutes had been gutted. And then they found, oh, wow, the reserve he took was the dummy. That wasn't the good one. Now, the D.B. Cooper thing, I kind of explained this before. When this hit the news, because you have to remember, this is 1971. Hijacking wasn't really a big deal at that time. And later in the 70s, it became a much bigger deal. But this was the first real case of American planes being hijacked and held for ransom in the air and all that kind of stuff. So it got a lot of media attention. Part of that has led into the whole name being changed from Dan Cooper to D.B. Cooper, because D.B. Cooper was the name of a person they suspected. And they erroneously reported that the man had called himself D.B. Cooper, which is not correct. It was Dan Cooper. They tried to do a recreation by throwing basically a 200-pound weight off a plane. And they determined that from that if a man was about 185 to 200 pounds, the jerk up that they felt was definitely him jumping out of the plane. Now, I'm trying to mentally put that together because, you know, a Boeing 727 is a pretty large plane. So it doesn't seem like the plane would have much trouble or react that much to a man jumping out of it. You know what I mean? To jerk upward? Is it
What
just...
if he,
Go
what if he
ahead.
like maybe he like ran and like people got really heavy feet. You know, like so like my sister when when she walks, like the ground just breaks. Like, yeah, you know, like I don't know, maybe he was just really clumsy.
Well, that's true. I've known some really heavy-footed people. What about you? So,
I don't know.
well, I mean, it could be. I mean, yeah, man, that's as good an explanation as any. We'll talk about some of the. Hey, Zach, you have anything to add about the search for this money that this guy stole?
Yeah. Well, the money.
Hey, and earlier,
Yeah.
hold on, I didn't want to interrupt, but earlier, I'm totally interrupting now. You said you said something about 10 grand. Wasn't it 200 grand?
Yeah, it was 200 grand. Did I say 10 grand?
Yeah, I thought I remember hearing something about 10 grand when I thought it was 200, or maybe I just heard you wrong. I was making sure.
No, it was 200,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I heard.
No, go ahead, Zach.
Oh no. All the money was photographed, and it was the serial numbers and everything was released to the general public. And they noticed that all of them, all the letters, all the serial numbers began with L.
Yeah, so that what they did is before, then what Zach is explaining is before they gave it to him, they took pictures of all these bills and they made sure the serial numbers all started with L. So that way, if you ever used any of the money, you could straight up trace it back to D.B. Cooper. So basically, the ransom money that he got was totally useless. Let's say
And they offered a $25,000 reward for the money.
Yes, and this money some of this money was actually found in February of 1980. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was camping with his family along the Columbia River, which is just south of Vancouver. And there's a little place there called Tina Bar. Sounds like a nice place to visit, have a few drinks. But Tina Bar is an actual bar. It's a little sand bar that's there. And this boy was raking to create a campfire. And as he was raking, money started coming up out of the sand. And so they reported this to the police. And what they found...
Why?
Well, this is what they found, though. Why? Yeah, why didn't they just keep it, right? Well, it was all disintegrated, and it was actually 3 packets. And it was still wrapped in the rubber band, and it was still labeled with the bank that they got the ransom money from. It was 2 packets of $120 bills, and then the third packet had 90 $20 bills. So the third packet, for some reason, had 10 bills less than the other 2. That's obviously does not account for the whole $200,000, but that is definitely part of the money that D.B. Cooper was given, and it's under sand next to a river. What were you saying, Ryan?
Nothing, just a snack. The missing money.
So they got this, and but this is it. That's the only bit of DB's money that ever turned up anywhere. No,
Where was that river at again?
Say that again.
Where was the river at again?
It was just below Vancouver and the American side. It was in Washington State, off the Columbia River. So some people who think that he died, they think that because people have always said, why didn't they find the parachute? Why didn't they find the body? Now, there's a couple really interesting theories about that. If you believe that he died, which a lot of people obviously don't, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a second. But some people think that if he landed in the river, that you know, either his body drowned, maybe he drowned. And I heard one story about there was a river boat that went down this thing, and that maybe the parachute got caught on that, and it just dragged his dead body back and forth until the cords broke, and then he just sank. There are a lot of theories about that sort of thing, but a lot of people tend to think that he landed in a river and that this money just sort of washed up off his body. I just imagine the guy jumping out of the fucking plane and just the money goes everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and he's just like trying to grab for money as he's
And he
falling.
forgets.
Pull the ripcord, yeah, and he just splats into the ground because he never pulled the ripcord. He's trying to grab all this money. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that he survived this thing? Could he survive this thing?
Well, you said the money though. This was on dry land that was by the river, but it wasn't. The money was still. It wasn't ruined, right?
It was on the shore. It was disintegrated. Like the top stuff basically just looked like ash. It was like black. But as you like flip the packets through, the stuff that was bound together further down was basically money, but it was just soggy, and it's not like you could go and spend it, you know.
Which is why they reported it. That makes more sense.
Yeah, and if they had used it, you know, they would have just traced it back and been like, what did you have to do with the DB Cooper? So, you know, you could never use any of that money. And the money was never used by anybody ever. I think I mentioned that before, but this money that they found on the river, all they ever found of it, no bill anywhere in the world has ever been used from the DB Cooper ransom. So he either got rid of all of it and never spent it, or he died and it wound up at the bottom of the river.
Has any ever been sold on eBay?
Actually, I kind of think some people have tried to sell this kind of shit on the eBay. I don't know if it's the official. I read something where they gave part of the money back to the kid that found it, and he tried to sell it later on the internet. But I'm like, do you give money back to people? That doesn't sound kosher to me.
Makes sense because it came from a bank. It was ransom money.
Yeah, it was ransom money. So, I don't know. Zachary, what are you doing over there? I've been talking for about 30 minutes. What do you think about this?
I think it's kind of strange. I mean, I feel like if he would have died, I mean, they would have found him already. I mean, it's a body attached to a freaking parachute, for God's sake. So somebody, it's 2019 now. You think that they would have found him by now. And if he didn't die, where the hell did the money go? And why are you laughing, Ryan?
Because you're just giving this visual of like there's a guy in a parachute stuck to a parachute. No one can see him.
For God's sake, I mean, like,
the guy in the parachute just, I mean, grocery cart tripping over the guy.
It's like he's still wearing the suit, and it's just a skeleton with a parachute sticking out.
And a sack.
And he's still like reaching, like his hands have like globs of money in it.
Money.
Like, give me my fucking money, wait. No, but yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people point that out. What do you think?
Why was the money? Like, why did he leave the money? So, I mean, because you're not going to go through all that fucking bullshit to not take the money. I mean, you're a numbskull otherwise. So
Or did he do it to throw them off?
Yeah, that's a good point. Say that again.
Maybe he did it to throw them off. If he
Off of what?
Oh, well, off the trail of the money. Some people do think that. Some people think there were accomplices. We just watched this thing where there was like this 2 landing strips and people were waiting for him down there. But like, number one, have you guys ever parachuted in 172 degree or mile per hour wind in the dark and try to hit an exact try to hit an exact spot in the rain? That's just in mountainous terrain that you don't know where you are. It's just impossible. I don't see how that's remotely possible. That this guy landed.
It can be done because they do have those people like from the military. I've seen them at air shows when they jump down, and they can actually, if you're trained to do it. I mean, it's humans are capable. Put it like that. But a random person who didn't know like which parachute is which probably isn't at that level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I just find it really hard to believe that this guy, I think this guy didn't know what he was doing with these fucking parachutes. Like, I think he just thought, theoretically, this is a good idea. I'm going to get money and I'm going to jump out of a plane. I'm going to get away with the money. And you don't really think about, like, you're 10,000 feet up. You don't know where you are. It's raining. It's 15 degrees. You're landing around Mount St. Helens. in the middle of a wilderness, how are you going to get, like, what are you going to try and land on your car that you left waiting for you in the middle of nowhere? It's a lot of, it seemed like it was planned really well right up until when he jumped out of the plane.
That's
Thoughts?
true.
Well, there's like the Rolling Stone thinks that it's a a military veteran, or they at least reported on it that, like, allegedly had, the guy who was DB Cooper, so
Robert
if
Rackstraw.
yeah, if that guy's like the real John Rambo, I mean, maybe it's far fetched though.
He's still alive, but the one thing about him is he was 20 years younger than the flight attendants say, that because they said that Cooper was in his mid 40s, and at that time Rackstraw was 21. So that's a pretty big age.
Yeah, but some people just aren't good at knowing how old other people are. Some people are terrible at it.
Well,
some people look younger than they are. Some people look older than they. I mean, maybe she just misjudged.
I mean, I look 18. No one would ever imagine that I was really 52. No, but you're right. But I don't know. I mean, these ladies were sitting next to him for like hours. I mean, it's not like they saw him down a dark alley.
I don't remember Rolling Stone mentioning the 20-year thing. I was just going by that. They threw that out there. There's so few people that threw anything else in the narrative that we've been told out there that there's not much to go by.
There was even a transgendered person that named Bobby Dayton that they said was DB Cooper at one point, and he became Barbara Dayton before this thing transpired. So they said that a man who had become a woman pretended to be a man to hold the plane for ransom. I find that really hard to believe. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
And terrible timing. That shit would have sold in today's market. She could have just had the Hollywood people just, at her feet. Let's make this fucking story. God damn it.
Rolling Stone would have definitely jumped on that story. That's for sure. But yeah, there have been many, many different suspects. Brian brought something to my attention the other day about a very famous person, I guess, who said that they knew DB Cooper. You want to explain that one, Ryan?
Yeah, Chael Sonnen swears up and down that he has information on DB Cooper and Hassan because he grew up in the area. He's been there most of his life, so I'm sure he's been told, the story's got to be more prevalent in that area than anywhere else in the country, just because people feel they're connected to it. But yeah, there's nothing really to go by other than he swears up and down that he has inside information and he knew who it was, and the real DB Cooper's dead now.
And Chael Sonnen, for those of you that don't know, he's a famous MMA fighter.
Yeah, he fought Anderson Silva a couple times. He's been in the UFC a long time. He's a personality. He has a YouTube channel. Like he's still a very visible guy. But he's a talker though. Chael could sell you anything. So like in knowing, like, if you knew part of his MMA gimmick, like he was so full of shit sometimes. It's hard to cross over to when he does talk about something in a serious light. You can usually tell the difference, but then when he talks about DB Cooper, you got to guess, is he being serious, Chael? Is he being the other guy? So I'd say no. I'd say he does. He's full of shit.
And so DB Cooper has become sort of like the Zodiac killer, in so much as like everybody's father, brother, cousin, the old guy down the street that's real eccentric, they're all DB Cooper. Like everybody has a DB Cooper.
Jack the Ripper.
Zodiac is DB Cooper.
Oh God, don't even say that, Zach, that the Zodiac is DB. Yeah, because we're going to start a whole new conspiracy with that. What do you think, Zach? Do you know DB Cooper?
Yeah, hung out with him the other day. He's doing pretty good.
He passed you that money, don't spend it.
Don't tell me my business. I'm trying. But yeah, I don't know. I think the whole case is a mystery. It's really bizarre. It's really bizarre. I still don't see how he hasn't been found. Or how.
Well, there have been some repercussions to this case that have that all of us are now familiar with. In 1973, the FAA made it a part of the regulation that you have to be searched before you get on a plane. And a lot of that was based on, in part, at least, the D.B. Cooper hijacking. There's actually a piece. Say that again, Zach?
To goddamn DB Cooper. It's his fault that we get searched now.
Fucking
Mother-
douchebag.
Fucker.
What's that?
He said a fucking douchebag. And I agree. He's a fucking douchebag. Because let me tell you something else.
You didn't
'cause
even get to spend the money. This is like the worst fucking good story ever.
Well, this is the worst part about it. This Boeing 727, this is something I actually wanted to do, and I can't do it now. They're all fitted with something that they call a Cooper vane, which means if you go to the back of a Boeing 727 and you try to lower the aft stair door in mid-flight, it will not function. You cannot
Yeah, what
lower.
if there's a mountain coming?
Well, you're fucked. You're just going to fly right into a mountain, man. You're done.
MacGyver kick it out.
MacGyver could get out. I think we could figure it out. They also have peepholes in the cockpits now, but that's not entirely because of D.B. Cooper. That's because every group that wanted to be radical in the 70s hijacked planes and wanted to go to Cuba. But you could say that it had something to do with D.B. Cooper. I don't know, guys. I don't know about this D.B. Cooper thing. I don't know. It's one of those things that probably will never be solved. What do you think?
No.
Because they closed the investigation in 2016. The FBI, this is no longer an active investigation. The FBI said, okay, for the most part, we think that he's probably dead. And he probably died jumping out of that plane, so it's over with.
If not, he died watching The Price is Right.
Yeah, he died as an old man,
Yes.
just sitting around the house.
Is Bob Barker still alive?
Yeah, Bob Barker, isn't he still alive? Yeah, I think so. No?
He's fucking loaded.
Is he not alive?
Maybe he's DB Cooper.
Do you know?
I don't think.
I thought he was still alive. Maybe I'm
I'll
wrong.
have to Google that.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know. Zach, what do
See
you
what
think?
happens when you let other people host your show? We don't even know if you're alive.
Zach, is Bob Barker alive, Zachary?
Shit. I thought he died years ago. I mean, I have no clue. If he's not, Jesus Christ.
How can there be 4 people on this show and none
I
of
thought
us?
he died. I don't know. I thought he died a couple of years ago.
Maybe he did.
I mean, that year everyone died.
Well,
Go ahead, Zach.
yeah, we're all gonna look dumb if he's alive, and I hope to God he doesn't see this, because he's gonna be like, "Wow, there's 4 people. I think I'm dead right there."
I love the part when you fought Sandler.
Oh, that was classic. Yeah, he beat the shit out of Adam Sandler. I'm not a big Adam Sandler fan. I'm just going to go ahead and confess that live.
I like Adam Sandler.
Yeah, okay, let's get a show. I'm going to go through around this room and I'm going to see who likes Adam Sandler. Rebecca. I'm going to take that
like
as
a couple of his movies. I'm not like.
Okay.
He was great on Remote Control, right?
He was on Remote Control?
Yeah, he was on Remote Control.
Oh. Well, she likes a couple of his movies. I like Punch Drunk Love. Like, I dig that one. And I think he's done a couple other ones that I liked, but I don't like the whoa, ooby dooby, baby dooby. That shit just annoys the fuck out of me. Zach, what do you think about Adam Sandler?
Oh man, I'd probably kick him in the skin puppy if I ever saw him. But he should have never quit smoking pot, because he's definitely not funny now.
I can see Ryan. He's just waiting to say something. I could see you starting to move over there. What's up, man?
What? Why all the Sandler hate? Fuck.
Well, you
Why
like.
not the Sandler?
She's on the fence about it. I mean, she might like it.
I like Wedding Singer.
She likes Wedding Singer, and you know what? Wedding Singer is a good point. I kind of dig that movie. I think it's pretty funny. Yeah.
Bulletproof was all right.
Bulletproof. Oh fuck!
Yeah.
Wasn't that the one he did
You're
with?
like the only person in the world, Ryan, that liked that movie. I'm just gonna point that out right now.
I think you're like the only person in the world that watched Bulletproof.
I like that opening scene. It's like,
Yeah.
actually, I was hitting on her harder than you think, motherfucker.
So
when he knows Keats has his back. Yeah, that's a good one.
if you had to guess between Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore, which would be your favorite? If those are the only two Adam Sandler movies that were ever made, Beck,
What were my choices again?
Happy Gilmore or Billy Madison? I know mine.
I guess Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore for me too. Ryan.
Friends don't listen to Endless Love in the Dark. What? You watch that movie? You know that line?
I just wanted to see how long I could hold the still face. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Zach,
I actually like Billy Madison more.
do you really? Okay.
I thought they were both classics, right up there with like the greatest of all time.
I mean, his company is named after both of them. Happy Madison.
No,
Zach,
but some of that shit's funny though. Come on, some of that shit's funny.
Zach, what do you think between the two?
I'm gonna choose Reservoir Dogs. I guess out of the two, I'd probably pick Billy Madison.
I think the thing that wins it over Happy Gilmore for me is the Bob Barker scene. Honestly, I mean that is such a classic, fucking awesome scene that makes me laugh.
All the Subway sandwiches.
The Subway sandwiches.
Wasn't that the one where Subway was his?
Was it?
Yeah, it was like
one of
one
the things he kept
funded by Subway in it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because he always sticks in things that
Yeah.
more money from it.
That's right. Yeah, he's all about that. But anyway, yeah. So we started out on DB Cooper, and now we're talking about Adam Sandler. Yeah. And then I'll probably have to do like some sort of thing where I see Adam Sandler. That's the weird thing for me about talking about people on this show that I don't like is like someday I might meet them or have to work with them, and I'm like, ooh, shit. Because that's happened before. I'm not going to say who or what, but I actually did a convention one time, and I had said something on this show about somebody, and they were sitting like 10 feet away from me. And I was thinking, like, I'll never meet this person. I'm gonna just tell everybody that I fucking hate them and that fucking movie.
Yell out, I still mean it.
Now I'm sure that person never watched. That person is like everybody else. They never watched the show. Okay, but still, it floats around, and you might, it might come back to you. So I've kind of made it a rule. But I think the odds of me meeting Adam Sandler are pretty slim.
If you're lucky.
And if that attitude.
My absolute highest goal, Ryan, is to star in a movie with Adam Sandler. I would like to meet one person that said that. Ryan's like, me?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I was actually, I had nothing positive to say. Like, because I mean, like, he's. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I like Adam Sandler. I like Adam Sandler, but there was nothing good to say about what you did. I couldn't come back to what you said.
Yeah. It's a hard one, man. Just think about it.
I'd do it, though. I'd still do it.
Maybe, she said maybe he'll play DB Cooper. I might watch that. As long as it's not a comedy. As long as he's like, hey, do. Take this message to the pilot.
Yeah, but I think you're being too hard on him. He hasn't done that shtick in a long time, I don't think.
Granted, I'll give you that. I haven't heard him do that in a while. He did dump that. But a lot of those characters he did on SNL, I was not a fan of. I'll be honest with you.
I thought it was a great time. I thought that was one of the best times for SNL, was that whole cast.
Well, I agree about the cast as a whole, but I just didn't like him, a lot of his stuff. Like, that was Mike Myers and Farley, David Spade, a lot of good stuff at that time.
Chris Rock.
Yeah, Chris Rock, Dana Carvey, a lot of good stuff. Yeah, and that was before
I've missed like a couple years of it now.
I haven't watched it in a while. The last cast I saw was Kristen Wiig when she was on there with that was the last episode I saw. So she's not been on there in a minute. Yeah,
every now and again I'll see something like pop up in my recommended on YouTube or something where I'll see like, if something over the top happened, but for the most part, yeah, I stopped catching it.
No. Well, I'm going to throw in a couple things here, and this has nothing to do with DB Cooper. We're far away from Tacoma, Washington at this point. But
Yeah, the way we were talking, I was like, I forgot we weren't like in the 10 minutes after the show part.
The plane is circling the airport.
Right, the plane is circling Puget
We're
Sound.
running out of fuel.
Right, we're way over Puget Sound, and we're just going round and round. But we're on this Kristen Wiig thing, and it just popped into my head, and I want to ask all of you something. That last Ghostbusters movie. Now, can I just say that I did not like that flick? And it's not because of Kristen Wiig or the girl that's funny. What's that girl's name? The big girl. Ooh, shit. The large girl.
May sound really stupid.
Say that again, Zach. We're losing you.
This may sound really stupid, but who the fuck is who? I don't even know who that is.
You don't know who Kristen Wiig is?
No.
Kristen Wiig was the star of Ghostbusters.
And Bridesmaids.
Bridesmaids. There you go.
Well, I don't know what that second one is, but I think the Ghostbusters, that's the one with all the women.
Yeah, the remake.
We haven't seen it.
I
None of you have seen
it.
I answered for you there. I was just, yeah, we haven't seen it. I don't like the whole like doing the reverse role thing where there used to be a guy and then like I don't want to watch female Ghostbusters. I didn't really want to watch the first Ghostbusters, but I went as a kid.
Did you not like the original Ghostbusters?
No, I did. I did. I remember seeing it, but I remember not really wanting to go. Like, it wasn't like that big a deal. Like I wasn't like into it like that. But I remember, the movie wasn't bad.
What did you think, Rebecca, of the new Ghostbusters?
I didn't like it. It was a bad script.
Oh, you mean the new one? Oh yeah. I didn't go there. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm talking about the one that had Kristen Wiig in it. Yeah, and McCarthy. Melissa McCarthy, that's her name. It came to me like 10,000 years too late. But and then Leslie Jones and the other girl that's pretty funny on SNL. I don't remember her name though. That played like the Egon. I used to be good at this. Like I used to just be able to go, oh yeah, that director and that cinematographer. Oh, and that was the prop guy. That Edgar was the prop guy. Now I can't remember shit about anything. I'm just getting old, I guess. But what I was saying about that was the Ghostbusters, I think it could have been a funny comedy like Bridesmaids, but as a Ghostbusters movie, I don't think it worked very well. And since neither of you have seen it, I don't know. This conversation's just going to go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like DB Cooper. And
I'm going to stick with it. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did Captain Marvel bomb? That's another one where they're replacing the. I don't get it. Just don't get it.
Well, Captain Marvel, she was a girl in the comics.
In the Marvel.
Was she?
Yeah, she was a girl. Carol Danvers, that was Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it did well. I mean, it didn't do like Avengers Endgame business, but that's hard to beat that. Or Infinity War.
I could have swore I had a Captain Marvel like action figure as a kid that wasn't a chick.
Now there was Captain Marvel, the DC Captain Marvel,
DC
that is Shazam.
Yeah.
Because DC had a character named Captain Marvel, and Marvel was like, "Oh no, you're not using that name," and so they renamed it Shazam, and that was a dude. That was a Captain Marvel.
Which came out at the same time.
Right, because Shazam just came out too. That has the Zachary Levi guy in it.
See, I stopped trading on HSX, so all these little minor details I used to know, like I used to know all this stuff you just said. Now it's like it's been a couple of years since I even touched it. After so many billion, it's pointless.
Yeah, that's probably the action figure you had though, was the DC version of Captain Marvel. Which when I was growing up, it was Captain Marvel. It was pretty recent that Marvel was like, no, you're not using that name anymore. And so they changed it to Shazam. But I mean, he was always saying Shazam is how he turned into Captain Marvel. So they just made that his name now. Just, whatever. So, and Zach just looks totally bored by this entire comment. Zach's like, when can we talk about?
Zach's like Pharaoh. What do I do with my hands? Like,
he's like, can we talk about a serial killer? Let's talk about Ted Bundy again.
How about that Jeffrey Dahmer?
He's like, did DB Cooper murder anybody in that plane that we could talk about? I just looked over at your little icon down there, and it's like you just look so incredibly bored with this entire conversation.
He did murder that parachute.
He murdered the parachute,
Yes,
and he
he
sure
did.
as fuck did. Yeah. So
It might
Zach,
have been what murdered him if he's dead.
yeah, I think it did murder him. If he needed that reserve chute, his ass went splat. I mean, I don't want to be gruesome or anything, but you know.
There used to, and oh man, I was thinking about the other day, like when the internet first came out and you can get all the good videos. Like, where do you go to see like people jumping off buildings anymore? Like it used to be, you can just see people like the shit Zach would love, you know, just like 30 feet, like 30 stories, just boom. I used to see them all the time, like people getting shot up close with machine guns and shit.
I love how crazy Ryan makes me seem. He's like jumping off the buildings and going splat. You'll love it, Zach.
The last thing I saw that was like that was, you know how everybody thinks they're a free runner these days, and they all want to run across roofs and shit and like hang off a building by your pinky.
Some of those videos are crazy. Crazy.
Yeah.
Some of those
Did
videos.
you see the one where did you see the one where they show the building with the crane on top, and this fucking kid goes all the way up the crane and is walking along the crane, so it's just like the height of a large building plus the height of a crane, and he's walking across the top of it, and then he just goes like he slips, and you just see him fall the whole way. It's like, what would possess you to do that, kid?
Big deal. I've done that.
YouTube hits.
Well, he got a big hit, that's for sure. I mean, it's hard for me to have much sympathy for it. Is that wrong of me? Because the kid was walking on a fucking crane on top of a building?
I mean, it's kind of like a prize fight. You know what you're signing up for.
Yeah, I agree. Beck?
That's just dumb.
It is. Zach?
Bloody Mary. Yeah, that's pretty dumb. I don't jump off of anything. So.
Well, this kid wasn't jumping; he just was like walking on the edge of this crane.
Well, yeah, but I don't walk up cranes. I barely walk upstairs. So.
He says, "I barely walk across the floor."
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen.
There was one not too long ago where the guy, he was a famous one, I think, over in China. I don't know if, I don't want to say the wrong country, but yeah, he fell, like, and there's video of it. He was doing like pull-ups, and then for whatever reason, he thought he could do more pull-ups than he could, and he lost his grip and fell.
I remember
that wasn't that wasn't that long ago.
No, yeah, that's pretty sad, because you see the kid and he's trying to pull himself back up, and there is that moment of, oh shit, like my arms, I can't do this, and then he goes, you know.
Like, see, before the early like gory days of internet, we had, what were those videos? The Faces of Death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was like the internet before the internet, and then internet came,
and then half of that was just phony as fuck, you know. They did a couple Faces of Death, like the first two had real stuff in it, and then they just started doing obvious effects.
You bite your tongue, LC.
We should do a video where we talk about the authenticity of the Faces of Death.
That might actually be a good one, because I only have the memories from like being really young, so I probably took a lot of it, like, you know,
there was a lot of them.
I'd love looking at it. I've never really watched it as an adult. I remember when I was like 14, 15, watched quite a few of them, maybe the whole series of them. Yeah. Wasn't there like 5?
There were a lot of those Faces of Death, because I remember going in like the movie gallery or the Blockbuster back when you had video stores, and you would see like there were like 5 of them lined up, and they all had essentially the same cover, which was just like a skull with Faces of Death Part 1, 2, 3 across the top of them.
I remember the one with the horses. That was pretty bad.
The guy gets drawn and quartered by horses. Is that the one? I think that one was phony, though.
That one of the phony ones.
Yeah, I
remember thinking like, this doesn't even seem like, but you know.
Yeah, and now Zach, I know you have something to say about the Faces of Death. You of all people.
Yes, a lot of the ones I saw as earlier as a kid were real. I mean, there was like one that I saw that was like a suicide One that was like a really horrific car crash. One of a guy falling off of a building from a surveillance footage. It was surveillance footage of a guy falling off of a building, like off of a balcony, and he fell like 30 stories.
Wow. What a
Yeah.
reaction. Huh? Wow. Yeah. Well, this relates back to DB Cooper because DB Cooper fell out of a plane. And so you see, this is all coming back together. We're not that far off the subject. But, and then they had, what was that website? Remember there was a website that was like Faces of Death back early.
Consumption Junction.
Consumption Junction. Was that it?
They had it had just a plethora of videos. You had to go through them one by one by one by one. But eventually, you know, like it definitely had all the content on it. They had like the most content as far as like stuff that would be very hard to find today.
And then there was that one with the, what was that guy's name? He was a famous politician, and they wrote that song about him. Hey, man, nice shot, man. He was the Bud Dwyer. He was convicted of, I think, embezzlement, and he called a press conference and then put a .357 Magnum into his mouth at the press conference and pulled the trigger. And you can find that shit on YouTube. My cousin said, sit down and watch this. And he didn't tell me what it was. And he played that shit, and you see him blow his brains out and slide down the wall. And whoever this fucking cameraman was like, he was like the James Bond of cameramen, because he zooms in on the guy's face and tilts down and follows him to the ground. And it just ends on a close-up of this like blood pouring out of this dude's face.
Now that is a cameraman.
That is a cameraman.
This is art, motherfuckers. I am going to follow this to the very end.
And it is the most traumatic thing I probably ever saw in my young life, because I didn't know.
They still have the footage up?
Yeah, you can find that. Just type in Bud Dwyer. It's Bud with two D's, I think. And you can see that on YouTube, because that's where I was shown it when it was early YouTube. And
yeah, but do they still allow that? Like there's different guidelines and everything now, isn't there?
I bet you if you type it in, you can find it. I bet you.
I bet you if I type it in right now, it'll close this conversation.
Don't do that. But once the show's over, type it in. I would say I would put a link to it, but I'm not going to do that.
No, I'm surprised I didn't know that song spurred from that. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah.
I've never seen the footage.
That song came from the Bud Dwyer thing. Yeah, hey man, nice shot, man. You know that song, Beck?
No, I know the song.
Yeah, but
Wish I didn't, as it is.
do you know the weird thing though is that Bud Dwyer was found. The charges were posthumously reversed because they found that he was innocent, like he said he was. So he actually killed himself.
Oh, wait. So he killed himself, even though he was. Oh, what? Why'd you kill?
He said he didn't want to go to prison and he was innocent, and he kept saying to them, I'm innocent. I didn't do this. And so he calls a press conference and he hands out to all of his staffers envelopes. And then he says, read it when this is over with. And then he reaches under the podium and grabs a manila envelope and pulls a .357 Magnum out of it. And everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? He's like, stand back. This is real. And you could tell they're starting to move in on him. And as soon as they start to move in on him, he puts it in his mouth and pulls the trigger. And that cameraman does his job. And he follows that shit all the way down. A waterfall of goriness. So let me just put it that way. And you see the whole thing. And this relates back to DB Cooper because I don't know. There's only so
much story, DB. It's not like you did a bunch of shit. You know, you'd have to expect this.
Yeah, but I think we've done a really interesting show here. We're about out of time, but we managed to work Bud Dwyer in there just completely randomly, and I'm kind of proud of that, Beck. So, are you guys have fun on the show?
Allegedly.
Zach? What?
Yeah, this was a blast. A little strange. But that's what makes a good show.
Hell yeah. There are no rules on LC Holt's weekly updates. Let me tell you that. You could start on one topic, and next thing you know, we're talking about men that climbed Everest. Next thing you know, we're talking about dilly bars at Dairy Queen.
And Ghostbusters.
And Ghostbusters. So I'm going to end the show here. Thank you guys so much for being with me. Thank you guys for watching and following this road of madness. Rebecca, thanks for being on the show this week. Even though we did a subject you're completely disinterested in. But next week, we're going to have something I think that all of you will like. And I'm not going to tell you what it is right now, but we'll get there. So until next week, I hope you all have a good,
A wonderful, wonderful day.
a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves.